And welcome to the June 9th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference. Please be patient. We'll do our best to be efficient and allow everyone to participate equitably. This meeting is also being broadcast and streamed online by FCTV in real time. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. As always, Chair recognizes the attendance and assistance of all our staff members, Jen, Kevin, Alyssa, Mark, Amy, and Susan. We're short 2 commissioners tonight. So for the record, Pat, we're moving you up. And I'll remind you that for commenting, I'll call on each of you at the appropriate time. Let's not try to speak over each other. Also, that votes are done by roll call. When I call your name, please state your name and your vote, even if you've made the motion for the second. To our public participants, there will be an opportunity for public comment for each hearing. If you'd like to comment on a particular hearing, you may submit any comments or questions via the chat function once that hearing has been opened. At the appropriate time, I will call for public comment, and any submissions will be read into the record. The link and further instructions are posted on the agenda. And I'm going to start with a form of other business. Just at the beginning of this meeting, I want to say we're meeting in person next week. We'll discuss it further at the end of the other business. But in case people leave the meeting, I wanted to get that out there that we will be meeting in person at Town Hall in the Selectmen's meeting room next week. Stay tuned.
Mr. Chairman, Courtney's going to be 5 minutes late. Sorry.
Okay. All right. First order of business, vote minutes, May 26, 2021. Anybody?
Chairman, I reviewed the minutes and I didn't have any corrections. I move approval of the minutes.
Thank you.
I
Pat?
Have a comment.
made a couple of minor corrections that I forwarded to Susan.
Okay. So the motion will reflect that they're corrected minutes. Kevin?
I'll second
Oh,
if it hasn't been seconded.
okay. Betsy?
I have just one change, and I'll send it. I'll look back and get the page for you, Susan. But it was a comment that I made about the Coonamessett Reservation that is being restored, and I think Susan put, which is kind of nice, that that Mark and I had gotten a grant to make it more beautiful, but really it was to restore it to a sandplain grassland. Hopefully it'll be a beautiful and functioning ecosystem when the project is done. So I'll send that to you, Susan.
So again, the motion is for the
Okay,
minutes
thanks.
corrected.
One more thing. Courtney wants to correct Jeff Oppenheim's name. Oh, there he is.
Jeff Oppenheim, it should be F-E, not E-R, page 5, middle of the page.
Duly noted.
Got it.
All right. Thank you, Susan. We have a motion and a second. I'm going to take the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
We have accepted the minutes as corrected. Next up are requests for determination of applicability. First up, Dawn McNeese, 44 Thomas Lane, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to demolish an existing deck and to construct a new deck in the same footprint. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelder, second.
Mr.
All
Chairman,
right. Yes, sir.
I would just take a minute. The staff have visited each of these sites. They've put together a plan for how to address the applicant's request. The detail is something that we should periodically mention and note. Congratulations to staff. And they present it well to us. So I just wanted to show
Yes.
appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you,
pointing that
Steve.
out.
Thank you, Steve.
And just to say it for the public, that what you actually want to hear, if this is your RDA, is you actually want to hear a negative determination. That means you can proceed. All right, so thank you, Steve. We have a motion and a second on the table to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Paul Giandomenico, 13 Pondview Circle, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to request after the fact approval for an unpermitted garage. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move, and I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Why doesn't it arise to an order?
So the garage was constructed, it's only about 199 square feet and it's constructed on existing asphalt. So there's no footings that were dug. There's no disturbance to the ground. There's no increase in the impervious surface from the project.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, did we have a
Pat,
second? Thank you, Steve. We have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Thornton Lewis, 56 Hamlin Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to vista prune according to FWR 10.18 10B. Mr. Newton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions or comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Zachary Ballin, 240 Mill Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to demolish an existing deck and to construct a new larger deck and to install mitigation plantings. Mr. Newton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we had a verbal request for a continuance until July 14th.
Gladfelter,
So
so
moved.
moved.
All right, I got Betsy's motion.
Okay. I'll second it.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second to continue this RDA until 7:14. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until 7:14. Next up, Greg Jones, 230 Acapesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to repave the existing driveway, construct a pool and patio, and all associated clearing, grading, and landscaping. Mr. Newton.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is withdrawing their application without prejudice.
All right. I don't believe we need to vote for that.
No.
Kevin must be getting tough on these people.
Yeah. Moving on. Next up, Terry Mancini, 7 J Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a shed and to install mitigation plantings. Mr. Newton.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, I.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Peter Akins, 424 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to upgrade to a new Title V septic system. Mr. Newton,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Any questions, comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, I.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Peter Akins, 426 Grand Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to upgrade to a new Title V septic system. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under both the state and the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, I.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Michael Delaire, 7 Main Entry Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct an addition, install dry wells, underground utilities, remove an oak tree, and to enlarge the gravel parking area. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move. And a question? Why not a notice of intent, or is it just floodplain?
You got it. Flood zone only.
Thank you.
Gladfelter, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, I.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, continued request for determination of applicability. Christopher and Erica Devon, 178 Crystal Springs Avenue, North Falmouth, Mass. For permission to replace an existing deck with a new support structure and decking. Mr. Newton,
Mr. Chairman, staff recommends a -2 under the state and a -3 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Bird, so move.
Gladfelter, second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, I.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Thank you. Next up, requests for hearing under a notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. First up, Aaron and Stephanie Sylvester, 63 Luciano, Batella Way, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a new single-family dwelling with all associated grading, clearing, and landscaping, and to install a new Title V septic system. Jen?
You're on mute.
Jen,
Jen,
you're
you're muted.
muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted John Doyle up to present his project. John, are you with us?
He's on mute.
John, if you can hear me, you're on mute.
And no video.
John? I know he's here, Mr. Chairman. I just don't know why he's having some technical issues, maybe. John?
I suggest as a matter of expediency that we table this and move on.
Oop. Mr. Chairman, that's fine. You can table it. I'm just gonna leave John up here in case he connects.
You have a number to get a hold of him?
I do.
If you would give it a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so
next-
we're gonna table this, so I'll need a motion in a second. for
I'll
that
make a
effect.
motion, I'll make a motion to table this hearing until he returns.
Thank you.
Need a second.
I'll second it. Gladfelter,
Okay, so I need the vote to table this. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Bird, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right, it is unanimous. We have tabled this hearing for the moment. Next up, continued hearings under a notice of intent. All right, Stephen Doyle, Black Beach Harbor Head Association, Black Beach Hills Road, Little Neck Bars Road, Gilbert Lane and Drift Road, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to conduct road maintenance and install stormwater management improvements along Black Beach Hills Road, Little Neck Bars Road, Gilbert Lane and Drift Road in West Falmouth, Mass. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we still don't have a DEP number for them, so can we continue them? Oh, and so can we continue them until the 16th, please?
Gladfelter.
Gonna take that long?
The 16th of
That's next week.
this next week, Jamie?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. All right. Betsy, did I hear you make a motion?
You did.
Thank you. Do
I'll
we have a second?
I'll
Thank
second.
you. All right. So the motion and the second is to continue this until next week, and hopefully we'll have a DEP number. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
No.
All right, this is unanimous. We have continued this until the 16th. Bear with me one second.
Mr. Chairman, I'm on the phone with John Doyle. I'm trying to get him to unmute.
All right, we're gonna move on, right?
Yeah, we'll move, I suggest we move on and then when he's unmuted,
Yeah.
we bring him back on.
Yep. Okay, so next up is Kristen Wallace, 122 Ostrom Road, East Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct an addition with associated grading. And Kevin, can you take this? Mr.
Hang on,
Yeah,
John. Hold on one second, John.
I can't
Oh.
promote him, but if someone could promote Mr.
I
McFarland.
got him.
Okay.
Mr. McFarland. Mr. Chairman, I've just promoted Mr. McFarland to present the project. Ian, can you hear us? Mr. McFarland?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hey,
Hey, there we go. Good evening, everybody. I will share my screen in a moment here. Just show.
Can we see him? Can you see your face?
Unfortunately, I should say fortunately, you cannot. I'm bringing this up right now. What? Share screen. All righty. Can everybody see this?
Yes,
Yes.
do you have your video on,
Yes.
sir?
I do not. No, the problem from last time still persists. I have a conflict between camera and audio. It overrides, and then I do not have audio, just camera, or I have just audio. So unfortunately, I have just audio. So basically what's going on here is they are proposing to essentially expand their deck over. I'll zoom in here a little bit more, make it easier. So they are proposing to expand this deck over, remove this existing patio and shower that is underneath, and add a proposed screen porch above on the deck itself. And in regards to the unpermitted clearing from last time, I have put on the 6 trees for proposed to replace the unpermitted cleared trees. And then I have also put on here to propose the 520 square feet of mitigation to accommodate the increase in net square footage for the addition or for the new deck. And that is the extent of it.
Kind of simple. All right, Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've been working with Mr. McFarland to just kind of go through a little things that we had some questions on. And I think that he has addressed all of our questions, made the changes that the staff wanted to see. And we will work with the applicant on the appropriate shrub species for the mitigation plantings.
Mr. McFarland, would you stop screen sharing, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Newton, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just a thank you to Mr. McFarland for working with us to hash out these issues.
No problem. I appreciate all the help.
We like to hear that. All right. Commenting. Pat, we're going to start with you.
No comments, thank you.
Peter?
I think it's nice when the staff gets to work with the engineer. No further comments.
Excellent. Steve?
No comments, thank you.
Betsy?
Just thanks for responding to the questions from last week, and looks like what we were looking for.
Perfect.
Courtney?
It was a nice collaborative effort. I have no questions.
Jen, you're going to get that raise yet. Kevin?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Not regarding this project.
No.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close this hearing. And there are no public comments, so I'm going right for the vote. Betsy?
Gladfelder, aye.
Courtney?
Bird aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Ms. McFarland.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night, Mr. McFarland.
Are we
Okay.
going back?
Let's try to go back. I have John on the phone. I'm going to try to talk him through this. I can share, if we can get John to do the audio, I can share John's plan for him. I have it up on my computer.
I'll move to untable the
So
Hearing
John,
on
you
the
might
table,
want to.
yeah.
Hello? Hello?
Hold on, John.
We
All
hear
right,
you,
can I get a
John. Hold on.
Okay.
Did I get a second to untable?
Paul
Second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, so the vote is to untable this. Betsy,
Wackelder, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
RSI.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
All right, so this hearing has been untabled, so just so that we're clear, we're back on Aaron and Stephanie Sylvester, 63 Luciano Battello Way, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a new single-family dwelling with all associated grading, clearing, and landscaping, and to install a new Title V septic system. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. John, you can hear us, right?
I certainly can.
Excellent. We can hear you now, John.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So I'm John Doyle, as you all probably well know, not at this point, but I represent Aaron and Stephanie Sylvester, who have filed a notice of intent application in accompaniment with my site plan. They propose to build a single family dwelling with a Title V sewage system, driveway and parking, and the.
1 second, John. Do you want me to share the plan?
I assume that you folks had copies of the plan.
Yep, I'm gonna just, oh, this is weird. Does everybody see John's plan?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Go on, John.
So that plan has been submitted with the NOI, and I was saying the pertinent utilities such as water, electric, and gas. I did stake the house out there. I don't know if people got out to see it or not, but I know some did. I did notify all the abutters and got the receipts back and turned them into Jen's office. The property is located between John Parker Roads and Old Meeting House Roads. It's in a subdivision that was done by the George Battello family in the mid-'80s. The subdivision was approved in 1984. The lots of around 28,000 square feet. North-south, it's about 400 feet south of Pond 14. I think everybody there is familiar with that. You would access it through Southview Way, which would be south of the lot. The Luciano Battello Way coming north ends at a cul-de-sac, and this is the last lot on the cul-de-sac and the last lot to be developed there as well. The west side of the property contains a 15-foot right-of-way or easement for access to the lot to the north of this, which is an open space lot, which actually goes up to Pond 14. There is a footpath that I see people from the neighborhood walking back and forth on that left-hand or west side. The east side of the property abuts topographically a cleave in the ground, so that it has about a 16-foot vertical bank on both sides of the bottom of it. And in that cleave, there is sometimes water. I think that we come to a conclusion here to call it a perennial stream. I know that over the years I have worked in that ditch. I think there are about seven or eight other lots that were developed along the ditch on the east and west sides. During my experience there, I've sometimes found a little bit of drippage through there, but the two other times I did lots over there, it was completely dry. I walked right through it. If you read the narrative I accompanied with this, you would note that that was my experience there, and that on the original subdivision, it was called a drainage ditch and on another page of the subdivision was called an existing ditch. It delineated some, or at least pointed out that there was a flume on the north end up at Pond 14, and it runs about 1,150 feet down to Flax Pond. I walked up to Pond 14 many times this winter and recently, and it seems that I can't find any part of the flume left, although it's been a long time since 1984 when the plan was put through this planning board. But up at that end now, where it spills into this ditch, Pond 14, there are sandbags that I've seen change in terms of how many bags they are and how high they are. And through my investigations down at the Natural Resources Department, I understand, and with Mark Kasper, I understand that I think DNR is changing those to fluctuate the flow. I think that Mark said they'd try to maximize it around March 15th, and that was surely right around when I've seen it flowing the hardest and probably the widest. It seems to vary from 2 to 8 feet wide. I don't think I've ever seen it wider than 6 feet. But the point is that, and in my narrative, I try to make that point that this is changing, it seems, this stream, since the years I worked in that area, and that would be the late 80s, 90s, and the first decade of 2000. It seems to me that it's man-made. I think it's clearly man-made. I think that as they began to dig this from the north to the south, the ground got higher as they went south, but they needed to keep a negative grade or a downhill grade to get from Pond 14 down to Flax Pond. So recently, I have to say that, and that's the last 8 months, I've seen water in there every time I've been there. Again, back in the middle of March, it seemed to be the heaviest. In going over this with the staff, they seem to have convinced me that it could be a perennial stream. And when we look at perennial streams, it seems like that could be covered under the Rivers Act. So even though in my guts, I feel like since it's man-made and it's always been a ditch, I can't see otherwise at this point from what I've seen in the last 8 months. And I believe that they're trying to get it to flow better. I know that I talked to one of the guys at DNR who's in charge of this, Chris, and he said that at one point it's only like a culvert or a pipe that's 8 inches in diameter, that it was blocked by a cedar stump, and he worked hard to get it out of there, and that may have increased the flow when that was removed too. So probably an increase of flow from the north, as well as freeing up some of that stuff, and it goes into Flax Pond. And I believe there was an old bog down slope from Flax Pond that it may have drained into at one time too. So the point is that if, just going back a second, I did look at the some of the plans that were approved that were built right on the stream, and they all have labels like ditch, or one said intermittent ditch, one said drainage ditch. So there's a lot of stuff that got done here and built when nobody really looked at this, and it didn't look like they were even doing filings on this to your commission. One note about the plan is that on the electronic file that I sent you, and that looks like the one I'm looking at here. If you look at the top of the inland bank, I drew an arrow down to the uppermost edge of the stream, and that would be probably around 14. You can see it's just beneath the 16-foot contour. I think actually pond 14 was designated so because that was the elevation of the pond. I might be mistaken about that, but I thought I read that somewhere. What we've tried to do here is when we looked at the act, the Rivers Act, it wants you to do very little in the first 100 feet of buffer from the stream or river, and a little bit more in the second 100 feet. However, it left room for lots that were approved in subdivisions before the Rivers Act of 1996. As I said, this was approved in 84. So what I tried to do is shift everything to the south and to the west and south a little bit, and put the house as far as I could over toward the right of way, so that if you look at the little bump out there that's 5 by 8 by 11, I think that's a mud room. The people will be walking by it only like 5 feet away, and they have the right to do that. So it's, you know, it's giving up some privacy to get it as far as we can from the perennial stream. We've tried to squeeze that SAS, the soils absorption system, and the septic tank up in the southwest corner, so that the SAS would end up 148 feet from the bank of the stream. Just as a side note to finish up on that, that bank of that stream is designated because where we found evidence that was the highest the stream got, and not the first break in the topography. And I believe that the definitions say that you take the lower of the two, and that is why I've designated it down at that lower point. And I don't expect it to ever get any higher than that. It's just you're working at an optimum here. They're coming from the lip of that pond, and I don't think it gets maybe where we saw the staining. It might get that high, but I don't think it will ever get higher than that. And this is a really steep bank. Myself, as well as the natural resource officer, could not walk it. You have to use a rope or something to get down or up. So it's pretty well secluded and protected. What we've tried to do then is do something in harmony, because we feel that the board has the leeway to give us a permit to build this. And since it was in there on a plan before the Rivers Act of 1996. So what I've done is I put a little bit of parking and driveway in that first 100 feet. You can see we put a catch basin there with a leaching area to recharge the drainage coming off the driveway. Set up a work limit at the 75-foot line from the perennial stream, and set up some siltation control there around the working area, so that actually becomes something that won't be touched. It will be a buffer to remain in a natural state. And up on the west side, we are pretty close to the line, so people will be able to continue to use the footpath, and we will be able to build as far away from the stream as we think is practical. I will note that we did get something from DEP with respect to the qualifying the impacts we'll have in those zones. For instance, the first 100 feet, the second 100 feet, all of them, and how much alteration there will be in square feet and percentages. And I did talk to Jen about that. We plan to have that back to them on Monday. So if anybody has any questions of me, I know that we're going to put some bin block on that work limit line, or just uphill of it. to, but that won't be seen from the driveway because it's retaining something. There'll be only 2 blocks high. That 38 contour worked out well. So there's a, drive on the garage and we hit right on the 38 so we can bring it back up to the driveway with not too much steepness. The person south of us has a driveway that goes downhill as well. I think where you see on the lot line there, I've noted a little spot where it says pave, and that is the abutter's driveway, and he has he goes down even lower than that and into his garage. These other houses that were approved on this stream over these years are all up only 35 feet off the stream, some of them. So this kind of took Aaron and Stephanie by surprise. I mean, it's just they're doing the best they can to make this thing work. I've known them for a long time. Aaron is a Falmouth guy that works very hard. He has 3 kids, and they're trying to get a home here. And we're trying to do the best to make something in harmony with what's going on to the west of us and what's going on to the east of us. And I think maybe it's time for me to shut up and see if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I mean, John pretty much summed it up. The Riverfront Act allows for a structure, allows the board, gives the board the discretion to permit, well, actually requires the board to permit a structure, a single family home in a subdivision that was created prior to 96, if it meets certain qualifications within the Riverfront Act and meets local municipal bylaws and regulations. This kind of falls into that. Looking at this, and I understand John's concern about perennial versus intermittent stream, but this area does show up on the USGS map. So we kind of have to kind of look at it as either intermittent or perennial. So the staff was being super conservative, calling it perennial. That said, I know there was some concern from some of the commissioners when you received John's first plan that didn't have that arrow down to that 14-foot contour line. Inland banks are a little bit different than coastal banks. It's not the top of the slope. The inland bank, it is the first observable break in slope or the mean annual flood, whichever is lower. So in your definitions, I think Alyssa summed it up quite well with your buffer regs. You have to go figure out what kind of bank you're dealing with. In this case, it's an inland bank, then go to the definition of inland bank. So at that point, you're either doing the calculation or you're looking for bankful indicators, which is called a bankful indicator, which is what John saw out with the staining of the leaves. So we're in agreement with that. And that means that that bank is 75 feet away. So it in staff's opinion, my opinion, it meets the buffer regulations. I know when I was talking to Alyssa, when we first were looking at John's paper plan, the one without the arrow, I immediately looked at it and said the top of the inland bank is wrong because I knew it wasn't going to be up that high. But he submitted the electronic copy with the arrow. So that kind of further explains it. Staff has no additional comments or concerns, unless Kevin Newton has any.
No, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to open up to commissioner comments. Courtney.
I think Jen has summed it up pretty well. I have no questions.
Thank you. Kevin?
I really have no comments other than it was really kind of confusing whether it was a perennial or just what we were talking about. But that aside, I'm fine with it.
Excellent. Pat?
I have one question. I don't know if this applies. But when we have new construction and we have a zone A disturbance zone, do we also require an additional 10 feet for the limit of work? And now I don't know if that applies to this plan because we're talking about a driveway and a wall. Just ask the question.
Usually you do require that 10-foot when, so that people can construct a house or something like that, Pat. So the board does have the discretion on the driveway. I've seen you approve it for patios and things like that, so the board does have the discretion. The staff's gonna come in strongly if there was a structure within that 10 feet, a deck or anything like that. But I have seen the board approve, again, like patios within that area.
Thank you.
And just one thing to add, DEP did have some technical comments, and it did have to do with the square footage of alteration that wasn't in the Form 3. So John will be getting us that information, and we will be submitting that to DEP.
Pat, anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Peter?
Peter, you're on mute.
Okay, Jen, is the DEP question something that we have to get the answer to before we take it under advisement?
The DEP just, what they're asking for is total riverfront square footage on the property, total alteration to riverfront, total alteration to riverfront in the 100 and the 200. In this case, they're looking to make sure that see where you see the hay bales going back towards the reserve area, they want to make sure that that lawn is limited to just the area that's needed for construction. So I think it's pretty well,
So
it's just, yeah, it's just number. I mean, it's just the numbers. If the board wanted to wait for the alteration, we could continue it to next to get that information. I don't think it's going to change staff's opinion.
Okay, so it's just for the record ongoing for the
Correct.
future. It's not a relevant to our decision to okay the construction.
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Steve?
No, I had no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy?
So my only comment is the whole the whole water flow in the Coonamessett has been altered for 300 years for various reasons. And Flax Pond now goes into the Coonamessett River, but it didn't used to be. It used to be in the watershed to the east. So this is all part of the this is all part of the flow of the Coonamessett River. But in this case, it goes from Pond 14 down this stream into Flax Pond and then into the Coonamessett River. So there's a big loop there. But I have no comments on the project except to say that it's a beautiful site.
It is, isn't it? All right, Jen, is there anything in the public chat function?
Not pertaining to this project.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Gladfelter second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing and take it under advisement. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Pat?
Harris, aye.
Peter?
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, John.
All right. Next up, continued hearings under an enforcement order. First up, David J. Preston and Jane H. Preston, 50 Weatherglass Lane, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted installation of fill within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Attorney Lawler up Mr. Lawler is representing the property owner. There is also, I know Attorney Lawless had some comments for the board the last time, and he is representing the abutter. Basically, this has been going on a little bit. Let me get my. Okay, and Mr. Chairman, I am going to try and do this. Share my screen with the commission. Everyone see that?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
there it is.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this has to do with some unpermitted fill on the property. Work was done on the property, and fill was brought into the coastal bank area. Mark had worked with the applicant to remove some of the fill, but there is quite a bit of fill that remains, and that fill happens to be in this area right here. If you see my cursor, what you're looking at is the red was a previous survey done by Cape and Islands, and the black is what currently exists on site. So what you're looking at here is this contour 12 right here. It used to be 7.7. So it's like about 4 feet of fill was brought into this area right here. And if you go to the site, and the board recently approved an RDA to remove pavement on this right of way. If you can see, the pavement actually isn't on the surveyed right of way. I think this area is in contention right now, or subject to an ongoing litigation right here. But this area right here that has been a concern of one of the abutters that has been bringing it to the staff's attention for quite a while. So you've got 7.7, 8.2, you got 12 over here. We have, this was 11. So, I mean, it did come up. We have, that's the contour 12. So in this area right here, there is a tremendous, well, not a tremendous amount, but there is a substantial amount of fill that has to be removed, specifically where the shed is and down towards the pond. So what we would suggest the board to do is issue an enforcement order requiring, to the best of the ability right now, is to return this area down to 7.7, 8.2 in this area. I mean, over here, I'm not too concerned with what's going on, but this area does need to be, the fill does need to be removed. And then obviously stabilize this site and replant this area. Can I stop sharing, Mr. Chairman? You want me to leave that up?
No, that's fine. You can stop.
So it's not necessarily like you usually say, this is just, we'd like the fill removed, the site restabilized and replanted.
All right. Commissioner
Okay.
comments.
Well,
Go ahead.
the Attorney Lawler's here if the board has any questions for him, or he would like to make a statement. I don't know.
Well, thank you. And there was an issue I explained privately to Jennifer. I missed the last meeting on a personal issue, which I apologize to the board, but there's nothing I could do about it. And I explained it to Bob Lawless. Again, my name's David Lawler. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Preston in this regard. I met Jennifer at the site last week. She was gracious enough to go down there, and we kind of walked off the areas of where fill needs to be removed. We're in agreement and we will remove the fill. We'll have to figure out what plantings once the fill is removed, and we'll do that in coordination with staff. In that this roadway is a right of way for numerous homes to the water, and the fact that trying to get a contractor in these crazy times, we would hope that the work would be done after Labor Day. It's been there for quite some time. I don't think there's a reason to do it during the summer months with the busy flow on the waterway, people launching boats, going down there and utilizing it, plus just the realities of trying to get somebody. My clients would like to have been here tonight, but they're visiting family in England, and the hour, it doesn't coordinate well with Zoom. So we understand the situation. Part of the fill was removed. Apparently it wasn't enough, and we're willing to cooperate and do it, with hay baling and everything approved by Jennifer and her staff to make sure we're doing it correctly. I've handled these matters before. I primarily do conservation in the town of Barnstable, but certainly have done in Falmouth in the past. And I think we can work well with Jennifer and her staff and make sure that this problem is fixed. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner comments, Betsy.
My only question is to Jen, and that is when we go through the comments, we're going to issue an enforcement order as you discussed. Okay. And thanks for your comments, Mr. Lawler.
Thank you.
All right. Courtney.
I have no comments. Other than when this fill is removed and removed from the right of way, and I haven't been out to the site, so I confess a little ignorance. Will the remaining fill on the property have to be retained?
The way it, I'm a lawyer, I'm not an engineer, but I believe it can be, the way it was put in, I think it can be removed and it would kind of line up with the bank on the opposite side of the paved right of way. Now, as to whether or not some shoring would have to go in either with, some type of architectural structure, I don't think so, but if it's necessary, we may have to. But I would have to rely upon an engineer at that point. I think we can try to remove it. I believe it'll stabilize. I don't believe you'll have runoff into the water. But again, I'm a lawyer, and we would need once it's done. But I'm certainly willing to meet with or have my clients meet with Jennifer or staff, and if they make a recommendation that we think is reasonable, we'd go ahead and do it.
Jen, what's your sense? You've been there.
I've been there. I mean, I think it can be done, Courtney. I don't think there's going to necessarily need to be any sort of wall or anything. There wasn't one before.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of fill. Some of the trees are going to have to be removed. They're just not going to make it. But I think those were planted. Some of the oaks, you can see that the base has been buried. Those may or may not survive. It's going to have to be done really carefully around the root systems of those trees. But I think, we've seen steeper slopes matted, jute matted, and stabilized. I'm thinking of one I was just talking with your attorney with the other day. It was a fairly steep slope, and a local contractor, actually one that was working on this property, had it down pretty tight. That wasn't going to go anywhere. So I think it can be done. It's just going to take some work, and it might look kind of shocking at first, but it will. The slope's going to need to be replanted, and it's going to need to be replanted with shrubs. So that should be able to stabilize it. I don't think a wall is going to be needed.
Okay.
But again, I don't know, and we'll have to evaluate it when the fill comes out.
Yeah,
I mean, we have the original grades. At least we have some of the original spot grades, so we have something to go by. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exact, but we're going to try to get it as close as possible to what existed.
well, I mean, in other words, if that's something that has to be considered down the road, I'm okay with it. That's all.
Okay.
There's also some other matters involving rights of ways and other people's rights to that area that are presently the subject of a matter in the land court. So, but again, I'm not an engineer, but I've done a lot of this. I agree with Jennifer. I think based upon the fact that there wasn't a wall prior to there and just looking at it and having a general understanding, I don't think a wall would be necessary. That we
Okay,
might have to put in some substantial plantings that have a good root system to hold everything down.
well, that's preferable anyway. Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin,
No questions. Thank you.
Pat,
No questions, thanks.
Peter,
No questions.
Steve?
So are you okay with the fact that the reality exists and this won't be able to get done until the fall, probably? Jennifer?
Is that to me, Steve?
Please, to
I mean,
Jennifer.
I understand. I mean, I understand, the neighborhood's gonna wanna use that right of way. I mean, that's gonna be really up to the board, not up to the staff. If the board would like it done right away, the staff will issue the order requiring it to be done within a month or two. If the board will allow the work to be done after Labor Day, that's
Thank you.
gonna be up to you.
Are we gonna require a plan? We need a plan of the,
I mean, Jamie, we have a plan right now. What we would do is require a plan once the fill is removed to determine how close we are to the spot grades that were done in Cape and Islands plan.
what about a planting plan?
We will need a planting plan. That's something we will need. But until the fill is removed, I'm not gonna have a real good idea of what has been disturbed. That's kind of where I'm at right now, so we could probably condition a planting plan be submitted with the species spaced a certain feet apart and all of that. And that should cover it.
And in the interim, it have to be stabilized.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
The problem is doing it after Labor Day doesn't give you a whole lot of time to plant. I mean, planting in late September, early October, it is a good time to plant. It's not a horrible time to install plantings, but I mean, they would have to be, Attorney Lawler, you would have to be ready to go right after Labor Day with a contractor to remove that fill, stabilize that site, so we could get that planted.
Yeah, and I mean, if we work with a neighborhood, I mean, but I think that would be the plan. And actually, I also do think that if you plant, in the hot summer, some of these plants don't make it. If you have the chance to plant them in early to mid-September, they have a month or so to really take, and then they go dormant over the winter, and it works out better. I've seen that in the past with some problems, issues. When someone planted in July, we ended up having to rip all the dead plants out in June the next year and redo it.
But even knowing
we
the
would
planting,
ask for, so I mean, we'll put a deadline to say September 15th, and we can have all our ducks in a row. And that way we can plant and be ready to go.
September 15th for the removal of the fill
Yes.
and stabilization of the site, and then the planting can be done after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to want a formal engineered planting plan, or just kind of something, that we can work with together? I mean, I have an understanding of, you're obviously going to want natural species that, will do well in that area and that are consistent with the vegetation on that bank as it runs up and down the waterway. So,
Well, again, we don't really know. I'm not, we're not gonna really know the area that's been disturbed until the fill has been removed.
Mhm.
So what we could do, as opposed to having somebody try to develop a planting plan, staff has a pretty good idea of the area out there, what's gonna survive.
Yeah.
And then we could sit there and say, transition, plants closest to the water up the slope, plant them 3 to 4 feet on center, and give you a list of species to do. Falmouth does like their planting, their shrubs to be planted fairly tight, so it will be a lot of shrubs, and then do a ground cover underneath with some deep rooted grasses to stabilize that.
That's fine. My guess is those cedars aren't going to make it.
No, those will need to be replaced.
Other than that, I think, there's some other stuff in there that's kind of junky anyway. And then, but
There's an old hay bale line that we've asked to be removed multiple times. It's in there too. That's going to have to be removed.
okay, we're gonna have to obviously put
But
a
I
new-
mean, Jamie, it's hard because to require a planting plan, I'm not quite sure the area to be disturbed, but if that's something the board would like to see and just kind of see a conceptual planting plan, that's fine. We can write that into an enforcement order.
like a sketch until then, and then we can do an as-built at the end or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
We've done that with other plans, as everybody will remember.
Yeah. As you see, we're willing to work with the board. We understand the problem. We're ready to deal with it.
Okay,
So
what's your pleasure, folks?
I'll make,
There are some chats, Mr. Chairman.
For enforcement?
Yes. The chat is from Attorney Lawless that is representing the abutter that's across from that. That's on the other side of that easement, right of way. And it's Mr. Attorney Lawless states, please reference my letter of April 29th on behalf of Mr. Bergen. That's the abutter. And he says Robert Lawless. And I know the board received that. I do have it up on my computer if you want me to
It was distributed.
okay, to bring that up. Okay, so the board is fine with that. And then Attorney Lawless writes, there is a concern that the deeded right of way remain open and available for movement of the paved way into the deeded right of way. There is a concern that the deeded right of way remain open and available for the movement of the paved way into the deeded right of way. And I think what
That's part
that,
of the litigation. And you want me to explain that or not, Jennifer?
well, I want to just share my screen one more time, Mr. Chairman. That's what I was talking about before. This is the right of way, the surveyed right of way. This is the pavement. This is currently being used. The board approved an RDA, can't remember when, a couple of months ago, to remove this pavement. Or at least the pavement on Mr. Bergen's property, which is right here. That would give, so I think what Mr. Lawless is saying is that when this bill removed and we stabilize the slope and plant it, that it not be in the right of way. But again, the slope has to be stabilized, and without being planted, it's not going to be stabilized. So I don't know how that's going to tie in. I mean,
What was that original right of way installed incorrectly?
May I address that? Yeah, it was way back when, well over 20 years ago, probably closer to 50 years ago, if not more. That pavement was placed in there. Presently, my clients are just one of many neighbors who are involved in a piece of litigation where they are seeking adverse possession or prescriptive easement rights over that portion of pavement in which the Bergens claim to be their own. That's disputed as to whether or not they own that or that is subject to an easement of the right of way. And that's what's presently pending in the land court in Boston. So that's all. And and obviously Bob Lawless can't talk, he can only chat in. He disputes that, and on behalf of his clients, and myself and another attorney representing some other parties claim this right of I just spoke about. So that's presently in dispute. So I think what Attorney Lawless is saying, that in the event that a settlement or a lawsuit goes in their way, they want the ability to somehow to move the pavement presently from where it exists to the bank area that is the subject of this hearing tonight. He would, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I believe that they would want to add pavement to the left and remove pavement to the right and locate the paved way, in a different spot. So, and that's all in dispute. So, that's not the subject of tonight, but it's just for clarification. So there's a lot of back and forth here, unfortunately.
So shouldn't the right of way be determined first?
The right of way is surveyed in, Jamie, so time. You all see it? I mean, this is where the right of way is. This is where the fill is. This is where the pavement is. Again, the board has issued an RDA for the removal of the pavement in this area right here. Either way, there was 4 feet of fill added in this area. And the staff had to bring it to your attention that it needs to be removed. As far as the right of way and whether or not this pavement is going to one party over another is going to prevail, and this pavement is either going to stay or this pavement is going to be removed and this pavement stays, and how the people access the water from there on, I don't have the answer to that question, Jamie.
What's the story about the shed, Jen?
The shed's in the right of way and is going to have to be relocated. The shed's going to have to come out when the fill comes out. It's either going to have to be lowered to an appropriate grade, or it's going to have to be relocated.
And my understanding is it could either be removed or lowered. That was my understanding.
Yeah.
Jamie?
Yes.
I have a question for you and Jennifer. Regardless of the outcome of the lawsuit, we are mandating to restore the environment. And even if the pavement were set in the wrong place originally, do we have the authority to say, take the fill out and plant the shrubs, and people will have to go between the shrubs to access their right of way? That's the question.
Yeah.
Well, the other question is, Peter, if Mr. Lawler's and his colleagues lose the suit, then even though this has been restored, they might have to restore a right of way through it.
Well, the right of way maybe consist of passage, not pavement.
Correct.
Well, that's right. That's right. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to be paved, but it may be, there may have to be a path through there. But that's that we don't have to worry about that now. You're right. We're worried about the impact on the environment right now.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. All right. Where are we?
I'll make a motion if you want me to.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to issue an enforcement order, and it will require the fill to be removed by September 15th. And that the applicants will be working with staff, and the applicants will provide a schematic planting plan. And I think, Jen, is it reasonable to say the plants have to be in by October 15th?
I think that's reasonable.
Okay, so that's part of my motion. And then when the project, when all this is planted, then there'll have to be a final surveyed plan of where things are. And that's my motion.
Thank you.
For the sake of discussion, I'll second it. I just have a question. Nothing in this motion is requiring the pavement to be removed?
Courtney, there really is, hang on. Once again,
I mean, I realize this is a
so
complex.
Courtney, watch my little cursor here. This pavement right here, you've already approved to be removed. Right? This pavement exists on the right of way. I'm concerned with the fill right here. If they can take the fill out and stabilize this area with shrubs and everything, I'm fine. I mean, I don't have an issue. The pavement's been there for 20, 30 years.
Okay, I see. So the pavement would go to on the upside of that right away line. But
This we've already approved to be removed.
yeah, and
under
on the downside of it, nearer the house, it stays pending the outcome of the suit.
Correct.
That's what I wanted. Just
The
wanted to
short
make,
answer was no.
the answer is what?
Never mind.
He's picking
So
on.
we have a motion and a second to issue an enforcement order as previously discussed. Are there any other comments from commissioners? All right, I'm taking the vote. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Not an aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an enforcement order. Thank you, Mr. Lawler.
Thank you, and thank you, members of the board and Jennifer for being so cooperative and working. And we'll get this figured out. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Good night.
Good night, Attorney.
All right,
Night.
next up, Samuel Pikowski and Marcy Gerstenhaber, 390 Hatchville Road, Falmouth, Mass, for unpermitted removal of vegetation within conservation jurisdiction. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have just promoted Lynn and Samuel Pikowski up as panelists. This is an enforcement matter that Kevin has been working on. So if Kevin Newton, you don't mind just kind of refreshing the board on this issue and where we stand, that would be great.
Sure. If the board remembers, this is an enforcement matter regarding unpermitted clearing down a steep slope at 390 Hatchville into Jenkins. I believe it's Jenkins Pond right there. And the issue first arose about a year prior to the hearing for the enforcement matter, when we tried to work with the applicant to make sure it didn't happen again. And unfortunately, it happened again. And so that's why we brought this matter to an enforcement hearing. And so Mr. and Mrs. Pikowski are here to provide an update on where things stand. I believe when we last met, they were tasked with providing a survey and a planting plan for you. But I will let them address the commission now.
It is next to Deep Pond, and maybe I will just remind the board what was happening there. It's two families, that's why you have different names and different people that met you guys prior year and this year that own the house, and we share the house. Practically, however, I work a lot overseas, and we are not there that much, unfortunately, because we love the place. We had a person that was doing the fall cleanup, which practically happened in December or January. And that person, without any authorization request or anything, trimmed the area of the vista, which is an authorized vista. There was no call for it. We don't need it. It's absolutely an unnecessary mess that we are recognizing. And last time we explained that we'll take immediately a couple of measures. The first one was to disconnect any relationship with that person. And the second one, to make a commitment there will be no yard work on that site without one of the families being there. In addition to that, we roped the area. We put big signs in English and Spanish that says, don't touch it without any permission. The trimming comes back, meaning it grows back. There is certainly no evidence whatsoever for erosion. And the trimming comes back, and we sent a picture to Kevin this Monday from the way it looks now. In response to the request of the committee, we contacted 3 civil engineering companies in the Cape. 2 of them didn't even bother answering. The one that bothered to answer is scheduled, if they can do it, 8 to 12 weeks from now. We thought it takes too long, and we're in contact with another surveying company outside of the Cape, and we hope that that will be done sooner than that period. I understand everybody is extremely busy, and it's crazy. We also had contacted several environmental consultants, and maybe I'll ask Lynn, that was in contact with them, to update about what's going on there. Is she there? If she listens to us, okay, maybe if she's not. Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
So I did contact 4 environmental consultants. I ended up actually planning with one group with Talbot Environmental Consultants, and we arranged to do a consultation with them in 2 to 3 weeks. That's when they have time, about 2 to 3 weeks from now. The other companies seem to be too busy. And we'll move forward with a plan from them. In the meantime, we were hoping to have one of the staff members come by to have a look at the situation now and give us advice, given the current situation, about what we should do moving forward. And we will be back there from June 21st until July 5th. If you would agree, we would be very happy to meet one of the agents there and go through the area again.
Kevin, is it possible to show the pictures we sent?
Yes, I can find that. If you have it available, you can share it yourself, but otherwise I can find that in my email and pull it up.
I don't see the pictures saved, Kevin, in the, I have the file for the pictures open. I don't see any new ones in the last ones we have in here are like March of this year.
We have one for Monday, because we were there, especially.
Jen, I just sent it over to you. I will see if I can open it as well.
You just sent it to me?
Yeah, but I can just as easily copy it and get it open.
Hang on, let me see if I can do this. I don't see it, Ken. There it is.
Just heard it. I'll go ahead and open it.
Thank you. My computer's taking a long time to download this
No
stuff.
problem. No problem. So,
Okay.
Mr. Pikowski, if you could just explain where we're oriented here.
We are looking from the area that was trimmed into the vista that overlooking the pond. And that was, I don't know, you can see pretty clearly the area in which was trimmed and the area that comes back. The vegetation, unfortunately, we can't see the full size vegetation on the left that was untouched. And we expect really by the end of the summer, the vegetation of the trimmed area to come back to the way it was. I'm not taking away from the responsibility or anything. I'm just putting the fact. I did walk through, and it's my expertise, and there is no any evidence of erosion or anything of that sort. So the good news, it is coming back, and we expect it to be fully back. The bad news, of course, that it was trimmed unauthorized and unrequested and of no significant or no issue with us, and we're really sorry about it. But the good news is it does come back.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here. If everyone's okay with that.
Thank you. All right, then.
Well, I think, I mean, the board has, we have a couple options. It would really be helpful to have a plan. And I'd really like to know what Talbot would have to say. You're going to be working with Mike Talbot Ecological out of Mashpee.
Yes.
Do you know who you're working with Talbot? Are you working with Mike Talbot himself?
I'm not sure yet. I'm working with Virginia right now.
Yep. Okay. I mean, Mr. Chairman, if they, and you said you're going to be in town between June 21st and July 5th?
Yes.
Okay, I think there are a few little pockets of time that maybe Kevin and or I would be able to meet you on site. I know, Kevin, you're out of the office from the 23rd to the 27th. So the staff does have limited time in that time frame. But if you would make yourselves available to when the staff has time, we could probably go out and meet you out there. I don't know what you're going to show us that we haven't already seen or we haven't already witnessed and observed, but we'd be happy to meet you out there. That would
be great. We appreciate that.
That said, you said Talbot can meet you in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, put you at the end of June. Mr. Chairman, we could continue this until July 14th so that we have a chance to, or the property owner has a chance to meet with Talbot. I mean, it's really up to the board. I think we need a plan. I think we need a replanting plan. Or the board can issue an enforcement order and we can put timeframes on when they have to get the planting plan before us, but I'd prefer to see a replanting plan, particularly for Deep Pond. We've been having a number of problems over on Deep Pond. I'd like to see a planting plan to stabilize the slope. It is fairly steep.
I can just testify to the fact that there is no erosion whatsoever.
It's not only the erosion I'm worried about, sir. I mean, if you look at the pond front, there's a lot of shrubs and trees and everything else. And all of a sudden there's this break, almost like a ski slope coming down is what we've been told. So, I mean, there was a tremendous amount of shrub material and everything that was removed, whether the root systems were removed or not. When we first met out there, we determined that hopefully the root systems were not removed and that it would come back. But the pictures I'm looking at, all I'm seeing is ferns and everything else like that. I'm not seeing a substantial shrub layer coming back up, which is concerning to me. So I do think it's important for you to meet with Talbot and to see what they have to say and to come up with a robust replanting plan for this area.
Well, I have to explain something. This is an authorized vista. When we purchased the property back in 11 years ago, the situation was not that much different. There are some cutting there that should not have been cutting, and I absolutely agree with that. But it is an authorized vista to begin with that was requested by the person we purchased the house from. So it's not that, again, there shouldn't have been touched and there is no need for it. The deck that we are at the house sits way above it, and there is no really effect in one way or another. But nothing
An
else.
authorized vista, sir, you would have worked with Mark Kasperzik back then. And Mark Kasperzik would not have authorized what you did.
I
He
did
would
not.
not have authorized the removal of trees or the cutting of the shrubs to the ground.
That was
A
not.
vista pruning is a 25-foot vista window with a shrub height of 5 feet and the selective pruning of trees, not the removal of trees, not the brush mowing of the shrubs to the ground, which has happened in this area.
Let me explain. We did not work on that vista at all. I'm not talking about cutting, I'm talking about the official. When we purchased the property, the previous owner already worked on the permits of the vista, and when we purchased the property, there was a vista there.
The difference between a vista prune and a clear cutting. Are you under contract with Talbot?
No, not yet.
So Jen, what's to prevent them from not accepting a contract and then this goes on more?
Exactly.
Nothing, sir. Nothing, Mr. Chairman, nothing. I mean, the board can grant one more continuance to see where we're at that point. And then at that point, if the board is not satisfied with the progress that's being made, we can issue an enforcement order and put some deadlines on there.
I'll make a motion that we continue this till, what was the date, Jen?
7/14.
7/14.
7/14, and at that point, we expect that you've met with staff, you've met with Talbot, and we have a date. At that point, we'll issue an enforcement order, and there'll be a date that we need to have a plan in hand and a date that the work will need to be done.
Sounds reasonable.
Just to let the board, I'm gonna just share a couple of photos, Mr. Chairman. So this was the photo. Sir, when did you purchase the property?
2010.
2013.
No, 2010.
15?
10.
11 years ago.
2010. What month?
Well,
I don't remember.
the end of the year, I think. At the
Okay,
end of the year, I think.
just to let the board know. Mr. Chairman, this picture was taken from the top of the deck, July 12th of 2010. Trees, shrub layer, pond.
I'll only comment one thing. I cannot dispute the picture, but I can tell you for sure that when the property was purchased, it did not look like that. So if the previous owner did on his own, or he requested a permit, because we discussed that when we purchased the property, and he said that he was there and they trimmed. I don't know if you know the guy. He passed away. His name was Mr. Freeman.
This is what the property looked like in 2016. And this is what it looked like in 2020, last year, when Kevin and I went out there. There has been a gradual expansion of that clearing. I do believe Kevin Newton, correct me if I'm wrong, did you guys find tree stumps in there?
Mark found a few locations where he believed there were tree stumps. There was a little bit of evidence of it, but those trees at the bottom there were taken down in the most recent cutting. That was 2020. Most
This
recent
was 2020.
2021, or in the winter. of
So
2020.
these trees right here. So
Those are
this is
gone.
June of 2020, when we asked them to ask the property owners to basically stop cutting. And then,
There was snow on the ground. It's probably December, January, February.
hang on. My computer's just very slow pulling up pictures. I apologize. Let me, oops, oh no, oh no. I have to get back there, sorry. And I just want to show you one more picture. Actually, I apologize. I just closed out of it.
Jamie, there's a motion on the table.
Yeah, let's move on. So we all understand it's been cleared, so
Okay.
if they get a continuance till the 14th, they have to have an active plan to get things rolling. And we can't keep putting this off. So the
Mr.
motion on the
Chair,
table is for
I'll-
continuance.
That's right now. That was in March.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, for the purposes of, I believe if it hasn't been seconded, I will second it, but I'd like to make a comment.
Be brief.
One question. Was there ever an approval by the Conservation Commission to do this cutting? Hearing none, the second question. So if there was never any approval given, and you're the owner of the record, it behooves you to fix this, Mr. Pykovsky. So, let's not equivocate around. It's been continued. Let's move on. You're taxing our patience, sir. Thank you.
I don't think there is any
We have a-
argument that we explained it.
We have a motion and a second on the table. It continues till 7:14. I just can't emphasize enough that Mr. and Mrs. Pekowski, you've got to work with somebody and get a whole general plan, if you will, of attack. So any more questions from the commissioners? All right, Betsy,
Whitefilter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this enforcement hearing until 7:14. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Oh, my. Next up, request to extend the existing order of conditions. Gregory, Marcotte and White Sands Association, 59 Davis Neck Road, Falmouth, Mass. DEP number 25-4376, requesting a 3-year extension. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the 3-year extension is to continue the beach nourishment at this location, which the board allowed for 450 cubic yards in total over a 3-year period. We've received 2 monitoring reports. We have not received the last one yet, so we do not know the condition of the beach. At this point, they are asking for a 3-year and an additional 450 cubic yards of sand in this location. I'd prefer to
Wait.
have,
Additional sand and the
Correct.
extension?
correct.
That's not an
That's not what
extension.
this says.
That's a new.
What would you be comfortable with, Jen?
Hang on, it says the above referenced order of conditions was issued in June 27, 2018 is currently valid until June 27th of 2021. And the order is authorized the placement of 450 cubic yards of sand above mean high water for beach nourishment over a 3-year period with no more than 150 cubic yards placed each year. The order required annual post-nourishment surveys. Post-nourishment survey plans were prepared and submitted in 19 and 20, and the survey for 21 is scheduled to be submitted within a few weeks or as soon as available. The beach nourishment project has been performed in accordance with the plan and the order of conditions with no adverse impacts. Beach nourishment provides sediment for the downdrift sand-starved beach areas, and the applicant would like to continue the practice for the next 3 years. So the staff is taking the statement, continue the practice for the next 3 years, as to add additional sand, add an additional 450 cubic yards throughout that 3-year period.
It's not a continuance.
It's an extension.
No, it's new material.
No, it's a new request.
Yep, it is.
So I have a question, Jen. Did you happen to
I
look?
can't stop people from requesting it, guys, so.
My question is, have you looked at the 2 reports that have come in? I'm just wondering.
A while ago, I haven't refreshed it, to be quite honest with you, Bets. Hang on.
I don't know, I see this as a new request. And I don't see why they would need an extension of time if this is the 3rd year and they only have a 3rd left to do.
Okay, and you can
My
just
opinion.
say no.
Right.
So I'll put a positive motion on the table, but I'll vote no. So I'll put a motion on the
All right.
table to issue a 3-year extension.
Second, O'Brien.
Okay, so to be clear, we have a positive motion and second on the table, which would approve the 3-year extension, and by implication, is that the right word? Implied an additional 450 cubic yards of sand. That's the motion, that's the second. Anybody have any other comments? All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, no.
Courtney,
Heard, no.
Matthews, no. Kevin,
O'Brien, no.
Pat,
Harris, no.
Peter,
Walsh, no.
Steve?
No.
It is unanimous. The extension is denied. Next up, vote order of conditions. First up, Peter Fang, Falmouth Condominium Trust, care of Cameron Aston, 192 Bayfront Way, East Falmouth, Mass.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the, core fiber rolls. 400 and, sorry, I'm getting something out of a drawer. 400 and some odd linear feet of core fiber rolls at Falmouth Port Condominiums. Project by Dave Martin. I think the one concern that the staff had was I wanted the, construction access replanted, and Dave said he wanted to take the approach that they had done at the last, Kevin Newton helped me out, the last project where they allowed the construction access to just grow back. So, I mean, the board, I mean, the staff would be happy to address it. I mean, check on it. If it's not growing back, have them replant it.
Yeah, that should be a condition.
Yeah.
Okay. 9, 2, 16. So this was closed on the 26th. Okay.
For the record, the quorum is all of us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and then
Anybody-
just stop the cutting on the bank, stop the cutting on the bank. They had pollarded all the little trees on the bank.
Anything anybody want to see in there?
Do you want to add any trees to the cutting?
There's a lot of trees, Courtney. I don't think it would be helpful at all.
Okay.
All right, folks.
I'll make a motion to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Gladfelter.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to issue an order of conditions as discussed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have issued an order of conditions. Next up, J.M. and Leah S. DeCouteau, trustees, Minot 3 Realty Trust, 507 Central Ave, East Falmouth, Mass. Jen?
This was to construct, well, there was the shed that was constructed without a permit. They asked for that to be approved under an amendment. The board said no. They came back under this notice to permit the shed. The shed that they had constructed without a permit has been removed without a permit. So now they are proposing to construct a 119 square foot shed. Give me one moment.
And that would bring them up to their 200 square feet that we generally allow.
That would bring them up to 200 square feet allowed as an addition under your regulations. As an addition, Pat, I see your hand up. As an addition, your regulations say you can add an addition to the existing structure up to 200 square feet. So the board has to decide whether they consider the shed to be, a freestanding structure or an addition. The comments that the staff had in the amended staff report, and our comments really don't change. That's for the shed. They were seeking approval. Where are the comments? We don't have any.
I can read the regulation.
Yeah, please.
10.3B1 says, following activities proposed within velocity zones shall be presumed to have a significant or cumulative adverse effect on the protected resource area values. Construction of 1, new structures, including buildings, sheds, and garages, and additions and substantial improvements to existing structures.
So the board denied the construction of the shed when they came for the amendment, citing that basically that regulation, that the construction of the new shed was prohibited in velocity zone.
And
That
we
was
don't
a
allow-
finding that was made in the denial for the amendment.
We don't allow fences in a velocity zone. And this is substantially more material than fence. So if we were to approve this, we would have to, these presumptions are rebuttable and may be overcome only upon a clear showing that said area does not play a role in the protection of said resource area values.
Really emphasize too that this blanket prohibition of new structures in the velocity zone the applicant's representative is working under the exception that allows for the commission to exercise its discretion to allow up to 200 square feet of an addition to the primary structure. This is, yeah, I think it's pretty clear. This is not an addition. It's a standalone structure shed on the opposite side of the lot. And I think that that was something that their consultant was glossing over and talking more about adding A plus B equals 200 square feet. And that's what you do under your discretionary authority, but that's not what's going on here. This is not an addition.
So Jamie, you want to know what the quorum is?
Yes, please.
Kevin, Betsy, Jamie, Steve, Peter, Pat. You're not on it, Courtney.
Okay.
Can I also ask if the,
Let's stick around, please.
may I also ask, Mr. Chair, if the denial of the requested amendment to the outstanding order of conditions is in the record, Jen? I think that the language in the denial site is relevant. Is it part
I
of the?
believe it is, Pat, because you had me put it in the record and read it verbatim at the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, for sake of discussion, I'll put a positive motion on the table that we issue an order of conditions for this shed.
Second, O'Brien.
Okay, again, it's a positive motion to approve the or to issue an order of conditions. Is there any other discussion, questions, comments? All right, so we're gonna take the vote. Again, Courtney's not on this. Betsy?
Gladfelter, no.
Matthews, no. Kevin?
O'Brien, no.
Pat?
Harris, no.
Peter?
Walsh, no.
Steve?
No.
It is unanimous. The order of conditions is denied. Thank you. All right. Next up is other business. So the other business is to discuss the continuance of remote meetings. So let me clarify. What we're looking to do tonight is to take a vote to, correct me if I say this wrong, Pat and or Jen, endorse the continued use of Zoom meetings if the legislature passes that would allow them to continue despite the the emergency order being lifted, and if the Board of Selectmen and or town administration allows. So what we want to do is, endorse it or not, but put it on record that we as a commission would like to continue or not. Did I say that well enough?
That's great.
I just want to be clear what we're looking to accomplish. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it. But again, we would be looking to take a vote so that we can be on record that if town management wants to know what we're thinking, they know. So anybody want to speak to it? Steve?
I've enjoyed the Zoom meetings, and mostly because of your clever administration of this, but I think it's time we get back to meeting public.
Fair enough.
If I could speak.
I would like to continue with the Zoom meetings. Some of the presenters, the engineers, have voiced their opinion to continue. And if the law permits it, I would like to continue it.
Okay.
I'd like to continue as well, Mr. Chair. I think that what I've seen, I became a member of the commission after Zoom meetings had started. So I haven't experienced them in open session, but I'm very impressed at how orderly things are when we can each see each other about to speak or to be, there's not talking over each other. There's very efficient meetings, a lot to do with our staff and with our chair. But I like the Zoom. I think it's very effective.
I'm just going to make a comment that I think we have efficient meetings when we're in person and in Zoom. And
Right.
personally, I don't really care.
Well, much as I miss walking down to town hall, my arms full of all kinds of papers and file. And to be honest, much as I miss seeing my fellow board members in person, I'm quite content with this, whatever the hell this is that we've been doing on the TV screens.
All right, Courtney.
This is a very interesting phenomenon, and we're all witnessing it. And one of the things that I've been working on is this internet fiber optic internet protocol, and one of the things is internet usage.
This isn't an infomercial, just so you know.
But I wanted to point out that Zoom has become a way of life. It's shown itself to be enormously efficient, and not only for our meetings, but across the board, and very convenient. And now that the pandemic is over, I don't see us ever going back to exactly where it is. So I'm actually torn though, because on one hand, I think it's very convenient. I can sit at home. I can be in my pajamas and all of that. And I can conduct the business of the town, and it's very convenient. But I also think there's something missing when you don't have that in-person exchange. And I think it's really important. And, while I would endorse the continuance of Zoom, it might be worth the town, assuming the law permits it, to explore some sort of hybrid model. So that would be my thought.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't think the town's gonna go for a hybrid. There's just too many moving parts. That's not up to us, of course, but hold on, Betsy. So, and again, I don't want to influence anybody. This is we just want to agree as a commission that we're, we want to vote one way or the other. Right, Betsy?
So the Pat and I mean, we knew this was coming up, and Pat and I were talking about it. And what I think is missing from not having, and Steve mentioned having an in-person meeting, is that I really don't think it's fair. I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but it's not fair for people who might want to comment. And commenting through chat just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, an in-person meeting, you see the body language. And I think back to that RDA that we had over the gate in West Falmouth. And, the dynamic of that meeting would have been a lot different if it had been in person. So, I'm torn. If the commission needs to take a position that it favors it or not, I would support continuing the Zoom, but I would certainly not have a heart attack to go back to our regular stations. And even if I have to cart all of my paperwork in and help Kevin bring his in as well.
We'll get you a two-wheel dolly.
Yeah.
So Jamie, when will we know? So right now we're planning to have in person next week. When will we know whether it's in? Oh, correct. Jen knows the answer.
I don't know the answer. Oh. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. There is emergency legislation filed by the Baker administration to continue certain provisions of the emergency legislation. specifically outdoor dining and remote meetings until September 1st. We don't know when they're going to vote. Maybe this week, maybe next week, then Governor Baker has to sign. They also might take up, there is a slew of bills that have been filed. And some of them want to extend outdoor dining, other provisions of the emergency legislation, such as like allowing alcoholic drinks to go, as well as the remote meetings to some point in 2022. I don't know. And then that's again emergency legislation that the state legislation will take up, so that they have time to go back and look at a number of other bills. And correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Pat, a number of other bills that have been filed to update the open meeting law. So right now, there was, and Pat, you might be able to help me this. There was some sort of legislation that was passed prior to COVID that would allow towns to have remote participation in meetings if the town voted for them. This is way prior to COVID.
Way prior.
Yeah, way prior to COVID. And the town of Falmouth did not vote to have that, did not vote that provision. Correct, Pat?
That's correct. And that's under the open meeting law, has been available to municipalities for a long time, but it's not envisioning all membership. It's persons who are like on vacation and want to
Correct.
participate remotely.
Correct.
But we didn't adopt it.
Yeah, so Falmouth never adopted that provision, if that's the correct term. So right now we're either all remote or in person. And right now we have to go back in person because our June 16th meeting needed to be advertised last week. And I still don't have clear guidance from the state on whether or not they're going to allow remote meetings to September 4th or longer, or at some point into 2022, so they can look at updating the open meeting law. So I can tell you that the town right now is not going to go to a hybrid format. It's just not, they're not going to do it. It's not going to happen right now. So if they allow, so the town's going to have to make a decision whether we stay remote if we're able to, or we go back in person. And I don't know what we're going to do yet.
So how did you advertise? That it might be one or it might be the other, or are we gonna?
Oh, you want?
June 16th, I had to advertise in person. I had no other choice.
Right.
According to the law, I had no other choice. The emergency legislation ends June 15th. I had to advertise an in-person meeting. I can't sit there and say either or, because if the remote doesn't happen, then we're back in the meeting room and you can't confuse people.
Right.
So I had
to give notice of where it is.
Correct. Thank you, Pat.
So the meeting after next, well, the week after our next meeting, we're off. So if the legislation is enacted, then the town has to address it. Because to be clear, even if the legislature accepts the continuance of Zoom meetings, the town does not have to accept that. Am I saying that correct? So even if you hear rumors that the state passed it, it doesn't mean we're going to do it.
Right.
Correct.
So, it's going to be that next. It's going to be after that we will hear whether it's enacted and whether the town accepts it, and that should be in plenty of time to advertise it.
Correct.
So again, the purpose of this is so that if the powers that be want to poll all the commissions and committees and say, what do you think? We just want to be able to give them an answer.
Okay.
So if this vote is, if it's allowed, we would be in favor of continuing Zoom meetings until September 1st?
Until whatever
it's
Just
allowed.
continuing. Yeah.
Yeah, continuing. I wouldn't put a date on it. That's
right.
Yeah. And if you don't want to continue Zoom meetings, you don't want to continue them. That's fine too. We just want to take a position so that if we're asked, Because I'd like to think that the powers to be will ask us, the various committees what they want to do.
Mhm.
Because I don't think they're going to do half and half.
They won't.
I don't see that happening. And they're not going to do a hybrid meeting. There's too much manpower involved and everything
Mhm.
else. So,
So this means
overtime.
that the capacity of the Board of Selectmen's meeting room is big
There's no
enough.
limits.
Well,
no limits
whatever the
anymore.
limit is. I mean, there is a limit to the room, but
Yeah.
there's no limit. There's no COVID limit.
Correct.
Sorry. Yep. I jumped the gun. Sorry.
So if we do meet there, though, we'll be required to wear masks. Is that correct?
Right now,
That's
as I
correct.
understand it, Courtney, there's still a mask mandate in town hall. I know that the Board of Selectmen took the issue up on Monday. I don't know what they voted, but right now, as far as I know, there still is a mask mandate in town hall, which would require all people within town hall to wear masks. And that would include public meetings.
And why don't we just stay on Zoom?
Mm.
Crazy. Okay.
But they did take the issue up on Monday, and I haven't gotten any word out of the town management of what they discussed.
I think it'd be important to clarify that.
So, well, of course, we all have masks stored in our cars or our pockets whenever we might need them. So I'll put a motion on the table to stick with Zoom.
I'll second that.
Bear with me. Okay. The motion and the second on the table is to endorse the continuance of Zoom. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure. All right. Anybody else have anything to, Steve?
I have no problem continuing this meeting. We do get along quite well, other than Kevin, but I think that it's one meeting in and then back out again we're meeting with masks is ridiculous. So
Agreed.
I'm comfortable meeting in Zoom. I just prefer meeting in person.
Yeah. And the mask mandate, there may not be, I don't know, Steve, right now there's a mask mandate in town hall, which means anybody in town hall has to wear a mask, including during public meetings. I'm assuming that. Now, there was something on the Board of Selectmen's agenda about transitional mask wearing in public buildings. I don't know what that is, but it's going to be, I think, when we go back into a public meeting room, whether or not there's a mask mandate, it's going to be a personal choice whether you wear one or not.
But you haven't been told anything different. I mean, you're in town hall every day. You haven't gotten a memo from Julian saying, okay.
The last memo I got was that there was still a mask mandate in all municipal buildings.
When I looked at the municipal screen, there was a comment or a letter of sorts from Julian saying masks are required in town hall. I don't know if that's been changed. I read that last week.
Yeah, well, they certainly were on Monday when I was there.
They
Okay.
were today as well.
I found out the hard way because I was chased all the way down the hall by Jen telling me to put on my mask today. Sounded like I was a criminal of them.
You were not the only one.
All right. We beat that to death.
I'm like the mask police.
We have a motion and a second on the table to endorse the continued use of Zoom meetings if we would be allowed. Betsy,
Gladfelter, no.
Courtney,
I'm sorry, what was the motion?
the motion, you seconded it. You didn't know what you seconded?
No.
The motion is to continue the use, endorse the continued use of
Yes,
Zoom.
yes.
Okay. Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve?
No.
Okay, it's 5-2, so as a commission, we are endorsing it. And again, none of this may matter anyway,
Yeah.
but it's just to get a collective opinion, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would, I mean, Steve and I are like, it's not like we're opposed to Zoom,
Right.
but we just see advantages in person.
yep. And those of us, well, I'll speak for myself. I mean, I endorse the continued use, but it doesn't mean that I don't want the meetings in person either, you know? I mean, it's a tough thing, you know, anyway,
This is a weird phase. This
It
is a
is.
weird phase of the whole
is.
COVID story.
And I
So
got
again,
to
just
share
to-
it with all of you.
to be clear, we're in person next week in the selectmen's meeting room.
Correct.
And once we know whatever we learn, we'll pass it on and see what the next meeting is going to be.
Okay.
So
Assume that we're gonna need a mask.
on your left elbow. All right. Last motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Bird second.
That was a close one. All right, Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, I, Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Pat,
Harris, aye.
Peter,
Walsh, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
We are adjourned. Thank you, folks. Thank you,
One quick
Justin.
thing for